though.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you all for connecting with us this morning. My name is Kirsten. I'm the admissions manager here at Solars, and I'm super excited to speak with all of you today. Just a couple of quick housekeeping items for you guys really quickly. Please make sure that you are only connected using one source. So either call in or use the link that we provided, but definitely make sure that you're only connected using one source. In addition, we are recording this session. So if you do not want your face to be seen, please turn off your video. All right, here today. All right, guys, so just a little bit about Solars before we get into the MSL program. Solars College was founded in 2007, and we became a full college in 2016. We actually just launched 2 bachelor's programs, which are starting in the fall, as well as our certificate programs like the MSL. Just so you know a little bit about the MSL program, it's a 300-hour certificate program. It's completed in about 15 to 20 weeks. This program can be fully online, or you can come to our Edison, New Jersey campus. Objectives of the course, they're up on your screen. I'm just going to run through them pretty quickly. We want to make sure that you learn effective relationship management with key opinion leaders, as well as other people that are involved in decision making. We really want to help you develop those soft skills that are so important as an MSL leader. We also are going to help you develop strong communication skills and presentation skills, as well as the interpersonal skills that I was just speaking about. Those are all super important when we're discussing the MSL, because you are really, as we obviously would assume, the liaison between pharma and the hospitals, doctors, anything like that. A couple other things. We want to make sure that we cultivate the ability to identify thought leaders. We also want to understand and learn the pre- and post-marketing launch of the drug development process, the regulatory and compliance requirements, grant funding, and the abstract and medical writing. So there's a lot that goes into this. It's not just talking. There's a lot of back end that you're going to be doing. And we want you to gain understanding about the role of advisory boards in the changing landscape of medical affairs. Again, this medical affairs program, everything's changing in the hospital world and the pharma world. So we want to make sure that you're prepared for those changes and you can effectively assist with both sides, both the pharma and the doctor side. Some really great things about Solars. We have flexible learning format, again, online or here on campus. We have a focus on hands-on projects, presentations, and case studies. We want to make sure that you're hands-on the entire time. You're not just learning, but learning and doing. You're going to be taught by industry experts. We're going to talk to a few of them in a few minutes, but these are people that are in the field and doing what you're learning about. We have mock interview and resume preparation by both the faculty and our career services office, so you're going to be ready when it's time for you to apply for those jobs. You have student service support for any tech-related issues. We're here for you 100%. We have job placement assistance and professional development, again, by our career services team. And we have attractive financial options. Just so you are aware, when you do want to apply, please email us at admissions@solars.edu. admissions@solars.edu, and we can send you the application link. We can also assist you with discussing the financing options. So there are a couple of financing options, pricing. We'll talk all about that if you email us at admissions@solars.edu. Now, I really want to delve into our faculty now. So let me give you a quick, a really abbreviated introduction to them. We have Dr. Robert, Dr. Myoma, and then Dr. Thomas that are going to be speaking today about their experience and then about the MSL. So I'm going to turn it over to them. Again, my name is Kirsten. We're going to be available via chat, so please message us with any questions. And like I said, admissions@solars.edu to get the application link and to discuss financing options. Thank you, guys. Dr. Robert, are you there and available?
For allowing me to speak to you today, and thank you so much for taking the time out to be with us on a Saturday morning. I guess we're the next best thing after the royal wedding. And my name is Robert. I work in pharmaceutical medical affairs. I am known as what we call a medical science liaison, or MSL. And the MSLs are really field medical affairs workers. Field medical affairs is a subdivision of a much larger medical affairs organization. My colleagues work in different aspects of medical affairs as well, and you'll be hearing from them. Really, today we want to talk to you about being a medical science liaison and larger about medical affairs within the pharmaceutical and biotech industry. Some of you may be familiar with what an MSL is. Some of you may not. Next slide. So over the next 10 minutes or so, I will attempt to provide a top-line overview of the MSL profession, provide some clarity around maybe some common questions you might have. What is an MSL exactly? What does an MSL do? What is a day-to-day work life like? What's the educational background required? And why become one? And of course, why choose Solers? And you'll hear, of course, why many physicians, pharmacists, nurse practitioners, physician's assistants, and researcher colleagues of mine have chosen the MSL profession and medical affairs as a larger organization. So what is an MSL exactly? Thank you. It's a healthcare professional, or HCP, employed by a pharmaceutical or a biotech company or a device company to provide clinical information to healthcare providers and, in some cases, payers, insurance companies, to be exact. Really, there are a lot of different responsibilities that are common within the MSL role from company to company. We deliver strategic messaging to healthcare providers in order to help them better manage their practices and their patients. We deepen scientific comfort around use of a specific product by healthcare providers. We create value through improved access to new therapies that aren't on the market yet, and we liaise between research institutions and our respective companies. And of course, we position our products pre and post launch. So pre before the product has come out, and post after the product has come out, in order to help the respected therapeutic area that we work in uptake our product much more quickly. That's a big part of our job as well. So next slide. But if you were to ask somebody what the primary role of an MSL is, it is hands down the opportunity and the job is to liaise relationships with doctors, with nurses, with pharmacists, with executives, you name it, somebody who's influential within the healthcare environment. And those are what we call KOLs. And they're at institutions, different hospitals. They're also at different community clinics within the designated geographic region or territory that the MSL works in. And our job really is to establish and maintain relationships with these important leaders, these opinion leaders, which is why we call them KOLs, on behalf of our companies. Next slide. Okay, so, if somebody were to ask me what is a work day like for a typical MSL, I just talked about sort of the overarching responsibilities of the MSL, but to get more specific as to day-to-day, I included this chart, which is actually a pretty accurate capture of what MSLs do. And number one, our job is unpredictable. Number two, it is customer oriented. So it is not a 9-to-5 job where one shows up to the same office, the same pharmacy, the same hospital every day. It is actually a 100% virtual job. Our office is in our home, and our schedule differs from week to week, from day to day. Your schedule is different from your other teammates on the team because you all have different regions and different sets of opinion leaders, and much of our schedule revolves around the customer. So this is a recent survey from Journal of Medical Marketing that I put in here about the identification of specific day-to-day responsibilities, and they asked MSLs about their day-to-day responsibilities. As you can see, not surprisingly, KOL relationship management is the most cited response. Although self-education activities, scientific advice or exchange, which we call it here in America, clinical trial support, and work at congresses and conferences accurately round out this top 5. I would say that the majority of these activities, if you noticed, involve interaction with customers. Those customers, again, being doctors, nurses, pharmacists, researchers, in some cases, patient advocates. Bless you. And this really does encapsulate what your day-to-day sort of responsibilities would be, and these can differ, your different time slots of the day depending on when the customer is available. It may be a 10 a.m. meeting with that customer. It may be a 6 p.m. dinner. It depends on the customer, and your job is to get to know the customer and get an opportunity to sit down and have what we call a scientific exchange. Next slide. Okay, so what does it take to become an MSL? Well, there's two things, right? There is an educational requirement that winds up going on. Of course, there are exceptions, but I included these two charts to identify the educational background of the working MSLs today. And as you can notice, the PhD, the PharmD, and the MD are more of the common educational backgrounds. Of course, DOs as well. I personally know several nurse practitioners and physician's assistants as well here in New York City who work as medical science liaisons. It depends on the therapeutic area. It depends on the company. But generally, they like you to have some sort of D, for lack of a better term. And of course, there are always exceptions to every rule, like I mentioned earlier. That said, the data in these pie charts is pretty consistent with what I've seen in regards to the educational background of working MSLs today. One thing that I will point out has become a newer trend over the last few years is the scientific and business degree combo. So more PharmD MBAs, more MD MBAs, more PhD MDAs, as schools start to give the ability to gain dual degrees when you graduate. This is a trend that seems to be growing. I myself have an MBA, so I can attest to the fact that it is true. That doesn't mean that just having a scientific background is going to limit you. It's just a trend that's going on because healthcare rather, is becoming such a business. Next slide. Okay, so, the other question is, right, besides educational background, besides your formal education, what skill sets should an MSL possess? I personally believe that MSLs need to be positive, optimistic. They need to be a little bit extroverted since they're approaching the customer. They should enjoy travel. We travel quite a bit. It depends. It's not uncommon to be on a plane once a week. It's, depending on the geographic region to which one is assigned, an MSL can have 5 or 6 states that they cover. So there is quite a bit of travel involved. Good networking skills as well, good listening skills, and of course the ability to move on from rejection. There will be times when doctors will slam the door in your face or do not want to see you. And our job as representatives of the company, is to focus on the ones that will see us so that we can deliver our scientific message to physicians that want to hear it. That said, there is a rejection involved in the job. It's something I should point out, and it's something that somebody needs to get used to. Next slide. Okay, so I included this slide for 2 specific reasons. Number one, the most common question I get asked by other pharmacists is, Bobby, how much do MSLs make? That's what they ask me all the time. So I figured I would put this on there for that. And secondly, the second most common question I tend to get is how much opportunity is there in terms of career progression as an MSL? This slide, I think, accurately answers both. Of course, the numbers in terms of salary change depending on your level of experience, depending on your background, et cetera, but these numbers are pretty accurate. And again, this slide shows a movement. So someone can be an MSL, move to a senior MSL, move to a manager, move to an executive manager, vice president, depending on the company. And there are so many other branches of medical affairs that you can move into. It is literally endless depending on the company you're at. We have scientific communications. We have medical directors. I mean, you name it, there is a job that you can move into. And you can even move into commercial stuff. You can move into marketing if you'd like global marketing. You can move into a sales role if you like. I personally have worked in medical, I've worked in marketing, and I've worked in sales. So there's a lot of movement. The world is your oyster if you join the pharmaceutical company. Next slide. All right, so finally I brought it, made it a little bit more personal. I asked 7 of my colleagues about why they would recommend the MSL role, right? And these were their responses. One said, because I get to travel domestically and internationally, which I had mentioned that travel is a big part of our job. The international travel does occur when we cover conferences. For example, I'm going to Vancouver in a few weeks to cover a conference. Another colleague of mine said that they really like the fact that they get to interact with customers. Another mentioned that they get to work in a real world business setting because pharma is a business when it comes down to it. Another colleague mentioned that they get to participate in cutting edge research, which is a very, very popular reason that MSLs give, the ability to work on clinical trials on behalf of our companies. The ability to work virtually, of course, is a draw for people as well. There's no commute time to an office every day. It's very sort of a self-starting kind of profession. You work alone a lot of the time. And of course, one of my buddies said he loves the fact that we get a company car and a yearly bonus. So I included all aspects and thought processes of my colleagues. And of course, mine is in the middle, right? I truly believe that the pharmaceutical industry and the biotech industry and the device industry all have so many opportunities for career growth and movement, much more so than when I was a pharmacist with, retail chains where 200 people were vying for one manager position or, the numbers that are just, skewed against you. So, that would be my take-home message, that the pharmaceutical industry has so much opportunity and I welcome people to try to move into it if they can. Next slide. All right. So in closing, why choose Solars, right? Why, there are other programs out there, maybe not. Regionally, it depends on what you like. I personally believe that the fact that industry professionals, including MSLs, are teaching the course, it gives the student the ability to gain real world perspective, right, from the inside, and not just from an MSL, from a medical director, from what it's like to be working on a clinical trial or in charge of a trial, right? There's all these different facets to medical affairs. So you'll get that from Solars and from their faculty. Of course, we talked about incorporating the interview process, right? So the MSL job is, there are 3 to 4 phases. It's very normal to have 3 to 4 phases of interviewing, including a final slide deck group presentation. So you'll be interviewed by 7 to 8 separate people before you actually get the job. I just mentioned slide presentation creation. That's a big part of the final interview. You are responsible for creating a 15-minute slide presentation. What I like about the Solars program is our idea to incorporate slide presentation into the program so that each student walks out with their custom-made slide presentation to use for future pharma company interviews. Of course, hands-on customer-facing practice scenarios are always important because the only way to really learn is to practice, right? So pretend scenarios where students play doctors, MSLs, and engage in scientific exchange with me playing a doctor as well as an MSL over specified time constraints. how to do a 15-minute scientific exchange. Maybe the doctor doesn't have time. How do you do it in 10 minutes? Maybe the doctor really doesn't have time. How do you do it in 5 minutes? All of this is practiced and helps someone prepare for questions that an interviewer is going to ask about what they think the job would be like. Finally, pharma guest lecturers, right? So students will be able to hear about different divisions, medical directors, sales managers, clin ops managers, SciComm managers, marketing managers, etc. We'll have pharma guest lecturers talk from time to time and sort of enlighten them on what they do on their facet of pharma. And I think the smaller class size is good. It allows each student to really get noticed. It allows students the opportunity to participate and individualize learning. It allows me to individualize their learning. For example, each student can pick a disease state article of their choice to prepare them for the therapeutic area that they're specifically most interested in or passionate about to become an MSL in. And we can work with you on that. So that's all I have. I would recommend the job as an MSL. My colleagues will give you more information on the larger medical affairs umbrella as well. And thank you so much for listening to me.
Thank you, Professor Robert. It was very informative from your end as a working MSL, and I hope everybody got a lot of information regarding daily life of an MSL. Thank you very much for the presentation. And let me hand over the mic to our next professor, Dr. Myoma.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Solar College Medical Science Liaison Program. I'm very happy to be speaking with you today. I am an entrepreneur. I own my company, Prism Biomedical Consulting. I am a physician scientist. So I finished my studies in England. Quite exciting time to talk about England, considering the royal wedding today. So I studied at University of Cambridge and University of London. So I finished my PhD in 2008, so probably about 10 years ago. So I have been in the research world. I've been in molecular diagnostics. So I did a postdoctoral fellowship at Dana-Farber Cancer Institute, and I've done overseen molecular diagnostics. I've been an associate medical director for a spin-off molecular diagnostic company in Texas prior to owning my own company. Welcome you to the program. You're in great hands. I'll try to spend in the next few minutes telling you why you should choose our program, the SOLAS program. You're coming into a great field. Medical science liaison have very exceptional role in the biopharmaceutical industry. And you're coming at a time that there are lots of changes in the biotechnology and biopharmaceutical industry in general. I'll shed some light on the molecular diagnostic wing of the pharmaceutical industry, because this is an area that is potentially evolving and has been evolving in the last few decades or so. So you're coming at a time there's a lot of DNA-based therapy, in vitro diagnostics, a lot of rare diseases that prior to, say, 20 years ago, they're just being diagnosed and patients get supportive care, but there's no medical treatment. But with all of the advances in DNA technology, like most of you are probably aware of, there are new things available. The new approaches to sequence DNA quickly, so we have better diagnostic technologies. And I put here a picture of the HiSeq, Illumina's HiSeq, a powerful machine that can plow through several DNA samples. I mean, a few, just 10, 20 years ago, we couldn't think about sequencing the human genome. With completion of the Human Genome Project in 2001, now we can just get whole genome sequencing, have complete genetic information for individuals in just a few days to a few weeks to months. So essentially, there's a lot of new technology, robust technology in the pharma today. And in terms of new therapies, a lot of rare diseases, a lot of genetic diseases that didn't have treatment options, that were mostly just supportive medical management. And now we have DNA-based drugs. For instance, there's a medication called Spinraza, oligonucleotide therapy, that the FDA approved last year. So you're coming into the biopharma industry at a time that is very exciting, and they're very new technologies you actually need to explain and translate to the medical and the general public. So medical affairs at this era is very exciting. And to get that set of skills and experience and knowledge to actually approach the challenges an MSL will face, you have the right program here to help you. Here at Solas College, we will expose you to some of the new technologies, will help you actually adapt to a changing biopharmaceutical market. So I'm happy to welcome you into this program, and also to remind you, aside from all of the DNA technology I'm talking about, there is also protein technology, monoclonal antibody-based therapies. There's so many of them, rituximab, infliximab, so many of the MABs, as they are called, monoclonal antibody-based therapies. And there are biotechnology companies looking for MSLs who are very skilled and understand the basis of this technology, have all of the skills to be able to convey technology to medical teams, to hospital staffs, to the entire medical community, so that these technologies can be translated to the bedside. You're in the right program. You're in great hands. We have diverse skill sets to be able to guide you through the new upcoming developments in the pharmaceutical to help you to adapt to a competitive market. The MSL career path is a very rewarding one. My colleague, Dr. Zaid, has provided a very informative session for you about the career prospects in this field. While it is very prosperous, it's also a competitive market. We are here to help you prepare for the challenges in the biopharmaceutical industry, to help you adapt to the changing demands and the needs of the pharmaceutical industry. So I want to remind you that while your education at Solas will expose you to, as much as possible, what the technology is today, the market evolves. So in addition to exposing you to the knowledge, we'll also help you to develop skills that will allow you to adapt as you journey through your career. For instance, we're going to, during the teaching sessions, not only focus on didactics teaching, but also problem-based learning, strategies to help you to adapt to solving problems. Because in the industry, day in, day out, you're going to have to use a lot of problem-solving skills. Some of these skills you can develop. Some of them you can also learn, particularly in very conducive learning environment that we're going to provide for you, which will be interactive, which will be collegiate, and will all be supportive to help you develop the skills to transition well into the competitive and evolving market. I'd also like to remind you that in this era of what's called personalized medicine, essentially new therapies are evolving, particularly with the advent of pharmacogenomics, where we have medications being targeted to individual genotypes. So before, say, a few years ago, 15 years ago, 10 years ago, first-line medication, we just go by general guidelines, depending on which region. If you're a physician practicing in different regions, you go with what's the first-line therapy for this disease. What's the second line if the first line isn't working? But we've actually realized that a lot of people are not, we can't know, everyone is unique. Essentially, when you say 70% of the population benefits from the first-line therapy, what happens to the rest of the 30%? We have adverse effects on medications. We have a lot of morbidity and mortality and allergic reactions to medications. And some of these at the DNA level, medications are being tailored to individual genotype, individual gene type. So essentially, with the advent of pharmacogenomics, the pharmaceutical industry is adapting to this, and even the FDA is responsive to this. The FDA has approved a number of biomarkers for different medications that are making it into the market. So these are things that you will need to be equipped with. You need all of this in your armory as a very skilled MSL to be able to translate the technology to the community. So here at Solas College, we will provide you with all of the skills that will help you succeed as an MSL. So I will encourage you to come to our program. Welcome to our program when you're coming, and you're in great hands. Thank you very much, and it's very nice to meet you all. Hopefully we'll meet you in the class sessions.
Thank you very much, Dr. Myoma. It was very good insight for our students regarding the MSL and in molecular diagnostics and personalized medicine. It was nice talking. And let me hand over the stage to Dr. Thomas Ramsey.
Read those slides. I think that would do you a lot of good. Mostly, I until relatively recently, there wasn't an MSL training program, and I think what they had traditionally done is they took people out of medical affairs or PharmDs and really forced them into a sales role. And so people had either the technical skills associated with working in the pharmaceutical or medical device industry and sort of forced them into sales, or they were in sales and forced them into the to learning the more advanced the technical aspects of the drugs or devices that they were. So this program seems to be unique in the fact that it's going to give you both. It's going to give you the presentation skills aspects as well as teaching you how to be a sales representative and teaching the really the hardcore clinical parts of being an MSL, which is very important because I teach at the University of Alabama, Birmingham in the School of Medicine. I teach in the School of Nursing, and so I get both roles. I was a sales representative. I was a medical affairs individual, and now I'm a teacher. So I presented to physicians, and now medical science liaisons and sales representatives are presenting to me. And so the interesting thing about that is I'm able to pick up on their keys and their cues and how they're trying to drive me and put me into a corner. So I'm a little bit on the defensive on that. But the excellent presentations that were done before me, I thought I hit on some of the key things that I don't like from medical science liaisons and from sales representatives. And this program, which is unique, and the training on both sides of it, will teach you how not to be kicked out of an office. And if you haven't been kicked out of an office, you really don't. It's a unique experience to try to get back in. I mean, we've all been there, right, Robert? We've all been asked to not come back. I mean, we've all been there. So,
yes.
So it's really what are you bringing to the table to allow yourself back into that office? What value are you bringing? What new piece of information are you bringing? How are you going to work around the gatekeepers on the front end? How are you going to get to that doctor? And I believe, Robert, you said a 15-minute presentation. That's usually during a night presentation with your peers, physicians, DOs. Everybody's having a steak dinner and they're listening to you. But usually you get about 2 minutes. You get
That's
2
right.
minutes to your whole story. And so I always like to tell people about educate them on 30-second elevator pitches. If you don't know what an elevator pitch is, look it up. So usually in front of a physician, you get about 2 minutes, maybe 5 if you're lucky. And that goes for physicians, DOs, nurses.
Previous roles as an MSL up to Maine, I would say I was on a flight once a week, and I was driving 3 times a week, 3-4 hours in one direction. And I would have an office day on Fridays. So that would be a typical week.
If I could add on to that, as when I was in my role with Aventis, my territory is defined. I remember I dealt with hemophiliacs. So there aren't that many hemophiliacs in the country. There's about 10,000, so they're spread out all over. My territory was from Denver, Colorado, east. And
wow.
We have a very large country. You don't realize how large this country is until you're sitting on an airplane for 4 or 5 hours trying to cross it. So my territory was Denver Children's. And I covered Philadelphia for the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia and Cincinnati and down to Tampa. So I everything from Denver east. So I lived on an airplane. I have 2.5 million Delta miles.
Exactly.
So
now
again, if you're lucky like Robert, have a smaller, denser population, New York, Philadelphia, Los Angeles, you're very lucky. If you cover Dallas in the Midwest, you're going to be on an airplane.
Yeah. And then that said, that the airport becomes your office, right? Since you're virtual. So you do a lot of work while you're waiting for the plane. You do a lot of work on the process has already been done. Because if you've gotten your PhD, if you've gotten your PharmD, if you've gotten your MD, your NP, your PA, degree. That is sort of the weeding out process, in my opinion. I don't know that there'll be something standardized. Tom, I don't know if you have more sort of insight on this.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I don't see a nationwide certification type of a process going on. There are some. If you look on LinkedIn, there are some MSL societies that sort of is a group think type of environments where people get together and share experiences and share competencies and learn new skill sets. But I don't see it coming down to a certification, an MSL certification or standardized certification type of a thing that works across all industries. Because pharmaceutical in itself is so wide-ranging. You got people who sell, antibiotics versus people who sell, DNA sequencing machines. So it's all over the place. And I don't know how you would really do that.
Yeah. What I think can be taught is the sort of a standard way, like Tom was saying, to approach a problem, to approach a study, to take apart a package insert. Those things. I don't think you necessarily need a standardized test for that. The test is your degree plus these sort of skills that you can't really learn unless you sort of practice as an MSL, what an MSL would actually do.
Exactly.
Thank you, Professor. And there's a question from one of our students, Randall, regarding this. Which are the undergrad requirements to be a MSL in U.S.? Are those degrees at federal level or by state level?
So it depends, right? So I know physicians from other countries who didn't get their, whatever is it, a USMLE, you have to take an exam or something, and they can't practice in the United States, but they are physicians. I know plenty of them that are MSLs. It depends on the company. Other companies want you to be a physician in the United States. That's for physicians. Now, with other degrees, for PharmDs, I've not met a PharmD who was a PharmD in another country and didn't become a PharmD here and take that whatever reciprocal test. So, I would say if it's an accredited university from the United States, you're good to go. If you're a foreigner, my guess is you'd probably have to show some sort of competency within the American system because the vast majority of our revenue comes from the United States. So it's actually tied to your job in that way.
Thank you, Professor. There is one more question from one of our students, Divya. As a pharmacist, I have the skill set to do presentation and have a lot of knowledge base about medication. How taking this course would help me in becoming an MSL? I have applied MSL role before because I don't have an MSL on my resume. My application gets filtered out. I definitely know I'm qualified.
That's a competitive nature of business associated with that, I think.
Yeah.
So, there is some luck associated with getting a role as an MSL. Sometimes it's there's two things in getting any single job. There's the ability to do the job and the fit. And you may have the ability to do the job. You may be an excellent, but it may not be a good fit. They may need a specific type of skill set that they're looking for, and the hiring manager is looking for that. He may know it or subconsciously know it, and it's just there's just the fit. You may be an excellent individual, but it doesn't fit into his existing team or his or her existing team. Divya,
Tom's right. Tom's 1,000% right. The other thing that I would add to that is that it's very common for healthcare providers because we have to learn the large amounts of information and we take pride in being educated, and it's very common for us to truly believe that we have what it takes to be something. And a lot of times we do. It's more about approaching it in the way of what can I do if people aren't calling me, if my resume is not getting noticed, what are the things that I can do to improve myself in order to achieve the goal of getting noticed, right? So it's about a small win. The goal would be, my guess with you is what we would need to do is get your resume noticed, right? And get you to shine in your first interview, which is even more important than that, because if your resume gets noticed and they actually talk to you and you fall flat, you're not going to get to the second round. So the better question, I think, is you probably do have the skill set. I believe you. I don't know that without experience of how to do an interview or what your resume should look like, an MSL resume should follow a certain format as well. There may be things that we could help you with and get you that goal of getting your first interview.
I agree with what my colleagues have advised you, but in addition to that, just to have an extra line to that is that is exactly what we're here to do for you. To transitioning, a lot of business executives has realized that it's not just the education that people get from universities. You can go to the top universities, get all the best grades, but doing the job, sometimes there's a little bit of a gap between the education and actually hands-on doing the job. So, and a lot of hiring managers think about this because there's a lot of investment for them to hire somebody. So that bit of transition, and which in reality the company can train you, but bear in mind these are business model companies and they think about who are we going to spend the least amount of money training. And so you come into Solace College and getting the training that will help you transition into the role easily actually makes you more attractive for hiring managers. Because you think about it, if you were an hiring manager, you have people who you might need to put on a 6-month training. They might go on field training, shadow other existing staffs doing the role you're interested in, shadow for a few months, as compared to somebody who's already got a transition to practice training that's allowing them to just hit the ground running. Obviously, as a hiring manager, you go for the person who's ready to go. So that's what we're here to do for you. If you feel you're not being noticed, your applications are not noticed, when you come to the training program and participate, I believe with unfettered reservations that your applications will now stand out, because hiring managers will see that, oh, you've done a sort of preparation for practice training. I hope we answered your question.
Thank you, Professor. It was very good insight for Divya. And let us move on with the next student. It's Meher. What is the chances of getting job in MSL as a foreign medical graduate?
An MD graduate?
I'm sorry, Professor?
As an MD graduate?
I think that's what Dr. Zaid was trying to emphasize for you, that it depends on the company, it depends on their business goals and how you fit in with what the hiring managers are looking for. I mean, it wouldn't hurt being ECFMG certified. It endorses your medical degree that is essentially equivalent to a United States medical degree. Being a licensed doctor in the state also, passing USMLE Step 3 also has another extra line of weighting, because think about it, if you're talking to doctors in a hospital setting, you're talking as a colleague to them. It endorses you that you can actually talk the U.S. doctor language to U.S. physicians. But aside from that, I know there are other things that come in with the MSL role, like we discussed in terms of sales and marketing. And all of this will be what hiring managers will also be looking for. So if you're in the program, you have if you come into the program, there are skills that you will take from this program, from learning from Dr. Zahid, Dr. Ramsey, and Hyde that will help you transition well.
Thank you, Professor Mayal. Students, do you have any other questions?